Hello dear viewers. Today, I'm going to share with you an inspiring story about the journey of overcoming challenges by James and Diep, two determined and passionate professionals. They faced a terrifying crisis when their flight to sign a major timber contract for their company encountered a serious malfunction. In that life-or-death moment, James and Diep stayed calm, fought their fears, and were lucky to survive. Not only that, they quickly reorganized, perfected their presentation, and successfully closed the important deal that saved their company from bankruptcy. This story is not only a testament to the power of perseverance but also a reminder that with faith and support, we can overcome any hardship. If you love inspiring stories like this, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you won't miss any exciting videos coming up. Thank you for watching and supporting. The morning air was crisp and filled with a quiet tension as James stood outside the airport terminal, glancing at his watch for what felt like the 100th time. Beside him, Diep adjusted the strap of her briefcase, her face a mask of calm determination, though James could see the flicker of anxiety in her eyes. This trip wasn't just any business trip, it was the trip, the make-or-break moment that could decide the fate of their entire company. For months, the company had been teetering on the edge of financial collapse. Raw materials prices were soaring, contracts drying up, and morale sinking to an all-time low. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on James's shoulders as CEO, as a leader, and as someone who believed deeply in the dreams that had built this company from the ground up. He turned to Diep, who was quietly reviewing the contract documents on her tablet. She looked up and met his gaze. "Are you ready?" James asked quietly. Diep nodded, her voice steady but firm. "I have to be. This contract, it's more than just a deal. It's our chance to prove we can still compete. To show that we're not finished yet." James smiled faintly, trying to draw strength from her words. "We've worked too hard to give up now. If we pull this off, it won't just save the company, it'll change everything." A sudden bustle of passengers rushing by reminded them that the moment was here. Soon, they would be thousands of feet in the air, hurtling toward an uncertain future. The stakes couldn't be higher. As they boarded the plane, James took one last look at the familiar skyline disappearing behind the glass. He thought of the countless nights spent strategizing, negotiating, and dreaming of this very moment. His mind flickered to the employees who depended on this deal to keep their jobs, to the families who relied on the company's success. This wasn't just business. It was personal. Seated next to each other on the plane, James and Diep reviewed their notes one final time. Their pitch had to be flawless. Every detail meticulously planned, every question anticipated. This contract wasn't just about selling timber, it was about building a partnership that could open doors to new markets and long-term growth. James reached over, placing his hand briefly on Diep's arm. "No matter what happens, we face it together," he said softly. Diep met his eyes and smiled, a rare moment of warmth amid the pressure. Together, she agreed. As the engines roared to life and the plane began its ascent, James allowed himself a moment to breathe. The clouds outside stretched endlessly, a vast unknown awaiting them. But inside the cabin, two people carried the hopes of a company, ready to fight for every inch of their future. The journey ahead would test them in ways they couldn't yet imagine. But in this moment, as the city below faded and the horizon beckoned, James and Diep knew one thing for certain: failure was not an option. For the first hour of the flight, the cabin had been calm, a soft murmur of conversations and the occasional clink of coffee cups providing a steady rhythm to the journey. James and Diep sat side by side, heads bent over their documents, rehearsing every detail of their upcoming presentation. The hum of the engines was reassuring, a steady heartbeat that carried them closer to their goal. Suddenly, without warning, a violent shudder tore through the aircraft. The seats jolted, coffee spilled from cups, and passengers gasped sharply as the lights flickered. A loud, alarming clang echoed through the cabin, and the plane lurched to one side. The overhead compartments rattled ominously, sending a shower of loose papers and a falling water bottle crashing onto the floor. The captain's voice crackled urgently over the intercom, breaking the sudden silence. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing a serious technical issue with one of the engines. Please remain calm and prepare for an emergency landing." James's heart slammed against his ribs as panic threatened to overwhelm him. He caught Diep's eye; her calm facade had cracked, revealing a flicker of fear. But she swallowed it down, her jaw tightening as she gripped the armrests. They both instinctively tightened their seatbelts, bracing themselves. The plane shuddered violently again, this time more forcefully. An ear-piercing alarm blared continuously, drowning out the whispers and prayers of the passengers. The smell of burning oil and metal soon crept into the cabin, thick and acrid, causing coughs and sharp intakes of breath. James felt his throat tighten. Through the tiny oval window next to him, he could see thick black smoke pouring out from the right engine, flames licking at the metal casing. The sight was terrifying, surreal, the cold reality of the situation crashing down on everyone aboard. The cabin crew sprang into action, their faces pale but composed. They moved quickly down the aisles, urging passengers to assume crash positions, heads down, hands over heads. James obeyed instinctively, pressing his forehead against his knees, feeling his heart hammering against his chest. The plane dipped sharply, the nose tilting downward in a steep descent. Turbulence rocked the fuselage, throwing passengers against their restraints. Diep's breath hitched beside him as the plane shook like a leaf in a storm. The roar of the engines faltered, sputtering as if fighting for life. Minutes stretched unbearably long. James closed his eyes, his mind racing, flashes of everything he loved, everything he wanted to protect. He thought of the company, their families, the dreams they'd poured their souls into. The plane jolted again, and he gripped Diep's hand tightly, silently promising her they would survive this. Outside, the world was a blur of clouds and sky. The plane wobbled violently, then steadied momentarily. The captain's voice returned, calm but strained. "We are attempting an emergency landing at the nearest airport. Please remain calm and follow crew instructions." The aircraft descended rapidly, the ground rushing up fast. The landing gear extended with a loud clunk, and the plane bounced harshly on the runway. A grinding noise filled the cabin as sparks flew from the wheels, scraping the tarmac unevenly. For a heart-stopping moment, it seemed the plane might skid off the runway entirely. Then, slowly, miraculously, the plane slowed to a stop. The engines cut out, plunging the cabin into a tense silence broken only by muffled sobs and shaky breaths. The emergency lights flickered on, casting a red glow on the anxious faces around James. James exhaled slowly, his hands trembling slightly as he reached for Diep. She looked at him, eyes wide but alive, and he felt a surge of relief so profound it nearly overwhelmed him. They had made it. Against all odds. The cabin doors hissed open and the crew moved swiftly to evacuate passengers. James helped Diep collect their belongings and followed the flow of people to the terminal. Outside, emergency vehicles surrounded the plane, their flashing lights painting the night in urgent reds and blues. Though shaken, James felt a deep resolve settle within him. The crisis was far from over, their meeting was delayed, the clock was ticking, but they were alive. And with that, hope surged anew. "We survived," James said quietly, squeezing Diep's hand. "Now, let's make sure this trip saves everything." They arrived at their destination exhausted, faces pale from stress and fatigue, yet eyes burning with fierce determination. The airport was buzzing with news of the emergency landing, but James and Diep ignored the commotion. They had a mission to accomplish. The hotel room became their battlefield. As soon as the door closed behind them, James flung his briefcase onto the desk and opened his laptop, fingers flying over the keyboard. Diep pulled out the printed materials, spreading them across the bed, and began reorganizing their presentation. Time was their enemy, and every minute counted. "This contract is the lifeline our company needs," James said, voice low but steady. "If we lose this deal, we risk everything: jobs, reputation, future." Diep nodded, eyes scanning each document meticulously. "We need to be sharper than ever. Show them not just what we can deliver, but why we're the best choice, despite today's chaos." Hours passed like minutes. They rehearsed, refined, and strategized tirelessly. Diep's analytical mind caught flaws James had missed. His charismatic delivery added passion and confidence. Together, they forged a plan that was both precise and compelling. The day of the meeting dawned crisp and clear, a stark contrast to the chaos they'd endured. James and Diep arrived at the sleek conference room early, reviewing last-minute notes and calming their nerves. When the clients entered, their expressions were skeptical. The emergency landing had not gone unnoticed. But James greeted them with a calm confidence that immediately shifted the room's energy. "We appreciate your patience and understanding," James began. What happened today was unforeseen, but it only underscores our commitment to excellence and resilience. Diep took over, presenting detailed forecasts, delivery schedules, and quality assurances. Her voice was steady, her answers precise. The clients listened, their initial doubts slowly giving way to genuine interest. James watched Diep with quiet admiration. Her strength under pressure was inspiring. He felt their shared determination radiate in every word, every gesture. Questions came, tough ones about logistics, risk management, and contingency plans. Each was met with thorough, well-prepared responses. James's experience and Diep's expertise combined to create an unbreakable front. As the meeting drew to a close, the room felt charged with possibility. The clients exchanged glances, nodding thoughtfully. Finally, the lead executive stood and extended his hand. We're impressed. Your dedication today and your presentation have convinced us. Let's move forward. Relief and triumph flooded James and Diep simultaneously. They shook hands firmly, sealing the deal that would steer their company away from the brink of collapse. Outside, the sun shone brightly, as if celebrating their victory. But James knew this was just the beginning of a new chapter, one built on resilience, trust, and relentless hard work. Later that evening, as they sat quietly together in the hotel lobby, exhaustion finally catching up, James turned to Diep. We survived the storm in the sky. Now, we've weathered the storm in business. She smiled tiredly, her hand finding his. Together, we can face anything. And in that moment, with the city lights shimmering around them, hope blossomed, a promise that no matter what challenges lay ahead, James and Diep would face them side by side, determined to build a future worth fighting for.